All right. Hello, everyone. Today is January 10th, and that's the official community meeting for Velero. My name is Udrin Vasiliev, and I'm the community manager for Velero. Please follow the code of conduct. Just be nice to each other. I've pasted in the chat the link to today's and every other community meeting notes. So please add yourself or add audio topics that you want to discuss. With that, I'm gonna share my screen. Hope everyone can see well. So let's refresh that. So first of all, Happy New Year for those of you who I'm seeing for first time this year. Wish you all the best. And with that, Scott, I think you're first on the list with some stuff to update.
So the backup item action V2 implementation PR that I had put together late December finally got the acts necessary after review, and that's been merged as of this morning. So thanks for that, everybody. I submitted a new PR yesterday, also relating to the overall epic here for the async operations, and this is the one to define the item operations JSON format and update the download request API to use this on the backup and the restore side. There's also some housekeeping relating in that PR as well, because Dave's original design that this is kind of taking over for had a new plugin type called item snapshotter, but the new design, instead of doing that, just modifies backup item action with the V2 with that operation. So I didn't remove the plugin itself. That'll be a separate PR, but I did remove since I'm already working on the download request, I kind of removed it from the download request area. That PR, or rather that item operation plugin type exists, but there's no controller logic that touches it, that does anything with it, because that was an open PR that was never merged. So that's a PR, plugin type that will be safe to remove as well, because there's nothing in Velero that uses it. But this PR doesn't do the whole thing. It just removes it from the download request API, since I was changing it anyway. So it kind of replaces the backup item action V2 field, or rather the JSON, instead of the one for the item snapshotter. So that PR is out, ready to review. I have two other PRs from before that were draft PRs because they depended on the backup item action V2 changes. So one of them is the restore item action V2 API changes. I need to rebase that, retest it, and then merge that. And then update that for ready for review. And I also have in the Velero plugin examples a backup item action V2 updates. I need to rebase that again, and then that'll be ready for review. And that basically adds a second plugin that implements the new API, so we can use the plugin examples to show that V1 and V2 plugins can coexist. It doesn't yet actually return in the operation IDs because we don't have the controller logic yet. So I will be updating the Velero plugin example as a way of testing that as well eventually. But right now we're just testing that you can register a V2 plugin and a V1 plugin from the same plugin image, and Velero will call both of them through the adapter for the V1. So those will be ready to review later this week, but the item operations JSON one is ready to review right now. So that's it for me.
Now, do you need attention from someone from the rest of the team to do that?
I would say that the 5752, that one is ready to review. That would be great to get attention on that one this week if we can get that merged. Then I can move on, because once that's merged, and because we already have the plugin type merged, then I can start working on the actual controller logic, which is kind of the biggest part of this feature.
Yeah, I saw that you pinged the team in the channel, so if you can do that again.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, I actually pinged this one. I actually made a mistake and pinged on the users channel instead of the dev channel, but yeah, but I did ping for both of these as well. I'll probably update that once I get those other PRs ready to merge. I'll ping the channel with all three of them again as well. Right. I would say of these three, the item operations JSON, which is the 5752, that's the highest priority, because that one is needed to do the next step, which will be the backup controller logic. Because the restore side will be the kind of second phase here. So those other two PRs that'll be ready to review later this week, that'll be great to get them in. But those are lower priority right now because the item operations JSON PR will become a blocking thing sooner than the others. It's not yet blocking me, but by next week it will be if we don't get that merged.
Sure. If you need any assistance from my side again, just drop a line.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
So let me
Daniel.
confirm, Scott. It's a 5752, right? You say that's becoming.
Yeah, 5752 is ready to review now. That is the highest priority one right now. The 5569 and the 66 under the plugin examples. First of all, those aren't ready to review yet anyway. I need to update those from draft after I rebase them. But also, those won't really block my work until I get to the restore side. Okay. This one here, the item operations, includes backup and restore related changes needed to the download request. And this provides the ability to take that list of item operations with their current progress, upload those to object storage, and download them. That's the purpose of this, which will be needed once we get to the controller changes.
Okay. Could you please also add Yonghui or as the reviewer, because he will be looking over all these BIA B2.
Oh sure. Yeah.
It would be better if you can add Yonghui in the Velero dev channel. That will.
Yeah.
That will be even better. Yep. Thanks.
Yeah.
I think his GitHub handler is Lyndon LYN.
LYN, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Daniel, you're up next.
Yeah. I joined this meeting just to give a heads up regarding the latest update of 1.11 planning. We have triaged all the 1.11 candidates. I think there's only one remains. Others, prior discussion, some we have decided to move out of 1.11, and the others we put them in the 1.11 milestone. And in order to meet the feature freeze milestone, which is targeting the end of the week. So the only one remaining is the issue. Let me double check. 1350. It's regarding a risk condition in restore item action. Scott, I see you added this candidate label. Do you think we still want to do that in 1.11?
I think so. So that's a feature that we've been trying to get in for a long time, but we were waiting on plugin versioning. The restore item action API PR includes the API needs for that. And the other thing is that I already have a PR from about a year ago that implemented this. So I do need to rework that and refactor that to work with the current code base. But I mean, I'm not starting over with the feature. I already have a PR that I just need to update. So that shouldn't be a problem to get in because the building blocks are already there. I just need to kind of put them together in the current code base.
Okay, so I'm adding it to the 1.11 milestone. Thanks.
Also, is there a list of those issues that we dropped from 1.11 just so that we can kind of see here, okay, these are the things that are no longer listed in 1.11 that we thought were going to be? Or is there a tag that we could use to find those?
Unfortunately not, because we just go through those issues and based on the discussion remove the ones, but mainly those 1.11 candidates were added by Pradeep and we confirmed with him. Those are I mean all the remaining candidates he added. It's not must. We just confirmed.
Okay, so basically anything that was removed has been confirmed with the original submitter that okay, we're good with that.
Right.
Okay, that's good. Good enough for me. Yeah,
just in case, if you can check the milestone V1.11, and if there's any issue, your interested not in the milestone, just feel free to let me know and we can, rediscuss it. But bear in mind that this is a relatively short release.
Oh, exactly. I understand.
Yeah, in order to meet the feature complete date, we may miss it, we may delay it for a couple of weeks, and we may also move a few issues out of the milestone if we want to, we don't want to delay too much. So that may happen. Just I'll give you a heads up on that. Okay. Yeah, I think that's regarding the 1.11 planning. And I have one discussion item. Shall we do that earlier or and I may drop early since it's
Yeah, sure.
late for me.
It's a super late for you, so go ahead.
Thank you. So I wanna do a quick discussion with Scott regarding the PR
Do you want me to?
5333.
do-
I can share the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me 1 second. Yeah, this week I spent some time to discuss with Xun regarding it. Yeah, I wanna let me share my screen. Yeah, here. So this one, the important use case. Let's discuss this, Scott. And the
Yeah,
current
so-
default behavior. Yep.
Yeah, if it helps, let me just, if I can summarize what that field does, because I think based on the way this proposal is written right now in the PR, that this part doesn't change. Basically, right now there's three values for the way this is set up. You set it to false, and nothing cluster scoped is included. We completely skip anything cluster scoped. Only namespace resources are included. If you set it to true, then that means we include everything cluster scoped, subject to includes excludes. So if you set it to true, and then you list the resources out there you want, then those are included and nothing else. If you set it to true and and you include all cluster scope, but then you have exclude resources set or exclude cluster scope resources set, then those are removed. The part that would be missing if we remove this field completely is that there's the default value where it's set to nil or absent. And this is a special setting that tells Velero pull in specific cluster resources as needed. This is actually important for the PVC use case, because what that does is basically if it's set to nil, then the only cluster scope resources we include, and again, everything subject to includes excludes, but the only ones that we include are going to be, for example, PVs that are related to PV. If we back up a PV, we include the PV. If the PV
I understand
bound
this.
to a PVC that's not in the backup, then we don't include the PV. Or if it's unbound, we don't include it.
Yes.
Same with CRDs. You back up a bunch of CRs, and in fact we have another issue there. I noticed that a user was saying, "Hey, I don't want to include all the PVs in the cluster when I'm backing up one namespace because it's a bunch of things that we don't need."
Yeah, I understand. So, but my thought is because the philosophy of Velero, per my understanding, is that it should always try to make sure the workload work after the restore. So we just make it always the default behavior, even after we remove this flag. Wouldn't that work?
So maybe here's what and I do agree with you. It's confusing because we have include cluster and include cluster scope. Right. If we could find a way to get rid of it, that would be great.
Yep.
We need to be clear on what we're losing. This would lose the ability to tell Velero never include any cluster scope resources. Although I guess you could use the excludes, but then you'd have to list them out explicitly.
But what do you think if we introduce something like?
I guess here's what the part that's confusing to me about if we got rid of this is, for example, how do you distinguish between a use case where the user says, I want to include all the PVs, So you list PV as, versus a use case where we say, I only want to include the relevant PVs. How do you tell Velero to do one versus the other?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I won't submit the comment, but let me type here. I think to include all the PVs, regardless if necessary or not, we just add this one. So we explicitly tell Velero, I want PVs.
Okay,
if we
got it.
remove that one, we just
Okay.
include the necessary ones.
Okay.
And if we do not want this, we exclude it.
Okay, so the one change that would be, and this may be okay, but I want to see if anyone else here can see a use case where this is wrong. What this would mean is that it would be impossible to run a backup where you back up a PVC, but you don't include the bound PV. That may be fine because that may be useless to back up a PVC without PV. But
yeah, first
we would lose the ability to tell Velero, I want to back up the PVC, but not its PV, or I want to back up a CR, but not its CRD. Is that acceptable? In other words, what we're saying is that we always include those things that are relevant, even if they're excluded explicitly.
Yeah, first, I think what you mentioned is a really rare case. I don't think anyone really wants that. But I also want to point out, we will not lose that ability if we, we just let user, set flag like this. So the idea is in backup, the exclude attribute has higher priority. So if I explicitly tell Velero to exclude this one, the certain resource will always be excluded. Therefore, okay. In your use case, we just tell Velero to explicitly tell Velero to exclude PV, so that
okay, so
Velero will only back up PVC.
Okay, so that also means that here's another thing that's different. In the current logic, but both the way Velero works now with that, with just the simpler include exclude resources, but also in the proposal in this PR as it's stated, is that Velero considers a missing resource in the includes as equivalent to listing it in the excludes. This would be a change from that. That might require some changes to the includes excludes model, because right now the way it works is you get that the way Velero's give me includes excludes works is it gets a list of includes, and then it processes the excludes by removing from the list. So with that current model, there's no way that Velero could distinguish between PV in the exclude list or PV missing from the include list. If we intend to make that distinction relevant, then we're gonna have to change them in the internal model. We won't change APIs, but we'll have to change the internal model. So instead of excludes just removing items from the include list, excludes is going to have to actually be maintained as a separate list down the call stack. And then we'll need helper methods to basically distinguish, because right now there's two categories, included and excluded. We're adding a third category, included, nothing, and excluded. And that middle default category is only relevant for cluster scope resources. That middle category says included if relevant. For namespace resources, that's going to be the same as exclude. So we're going to probably need it when we do this implementation. We're going to have to keep that model in mind to say, we still need that concept of we have three states. It's not quite as simple as a Boolean. It's not include versus exclude. It's explicitly included, this default, and explicitly excluded.
I see.
And basically for cluster scope resources, instead of doing that at a top level of all cluster scope resources, we're doing this on a resource level. So explicitly included means we always include it. Explicitly excluded means we never include it. And that default level for cluster scope resources means we only include it as needed, following the same logic that we currently do with the include cluster resources.
Right.
The thing we need to be clear on is that I think for namespace resources, we treat that middle category as the same as excluded.
I think for the namespace resource, the default behavior will always be include, right?
Well, except if we say include pods and deployments, for example, and we don't list anything else, current Velero behavior means only include those things, exclude everything else. So you're right. Default is include if we don't say anything, but if we have an explicit includes list, that means anything not in that list is excluded.
Okay.
That's the way Velero currently works. And so if a user says, I want to back up only deployments, they say include resources deployments, and nothing else is included.
Okay.
And I think the same would be true in this new model where you say include namespace resources deployments, anything not in that list is excluded. Because there's no, with namespace resources, there's no logic in Velero like there is with the cluster resources, where there's this idea of PVs, for example, that are in that kind of middle ground. So I think that middle ground doesn't exist. I mean, you're right. The default is, if you say include namespace resources star, because and there were comments about why that's needed for consistency with the new resources. But I think we can get rid of that field if, again, if we make use of the if we treat if we change the model so that middle, not excluded, not included for cluster resources has that specific meaning that's equivalent to this, legacy parameter. But for namespace resources, that notion of include as relevant doesn't really mean anything, because there's nothing in Velero that has logic around that, because that logic only existed for cluster scope before.
Right.
So the only other thing is, it would mean, I don't know if that would mean we would remove the field or we would include the field with deprecation, because again, there's the whole point of removing it would be to get rid of the confusing logic around that. Maybe you'd add a validation to say this field is no longer supported.
Yeah, I think this one will be, these two fields. I mean, ideally, in my opinion, after we introduce this new flag or attribute, these two attributes will be mutually exclusive. So if this one is sad, we will fail.
You're right. We already have some logic, or in the design, for example. We have the old include resources. We've already stated in this design that include resources and include, namespace resources are mutually exclusive. In other words, you need to use either the old include exclude resources or the new split resources. I think in that case, we still keep this field, but we use those that go together. In other words, instead of just saying include exclude, legacy are exclusive, mutually exclusive with the new fields, it's all three of the old fields are mutually exclusive with the old, because we have 3 current fields and then we have 4 new fields, and basically you have to either use only new fields or only old fields, and we can have validation to say, oh, you're using the new fields, you can't use the old ones anymore, or vice versa. That would probably work then.
If you think that will work, I will walk through the code with you and ask him to
we just need to be
this
clear if we do that this is going to require some changes to the internal structs around the includes excludes, because we're gonna, which we have to change anyway. Obviously, this whole proposal is going to involve a lot of changes to that, so that's fine. We're already changing code anyway, but we need to basically track all 3 categories for cluster scope resources of explicitly included, include as necessary, and excluded. But for namespace resources, we still only have the 2. It's either there or it's not.
Right. I understand what you mean. Yes, we'll make sure we'll add enough examples here. I really like this section, and to explain, all these cases where different attributes are combined.
And also, I just there's another issue that was someone submitted that you'd commented that this proposal would fix their issue, and I responded to that earlier today saying here's a case that it didn't handle. I think what we're talking about here probably does solve that, because the challenge there was they wanted to include cluster roles, all of them, but they only wanted the PVs that were relevant. And I think what we're talking about here would solve that, because basically they would put cluster roles in the include cluster scope resource list. They would not list PVs there, but they also would not list PVs in the exclude.
Right.
Okay, I think that does solve it then if we take that approach.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you're okay with that, I will work with Xun to refine this proposal. And
yeah, exactly. If you can get those updates that we discussed here kind of listed in the design clearly, then I can review that and we can kind of go iterate over that to make sure we're clear on what the requirements are. I'm
all right.
Mostly what I'm trying to make sure we do here is that I know we're trying to provide new functionality that will help users to be a little more flexible in their using Velero, but I just want to make sure that we're not losing any real world use cases. I mean, if it's an edge case that no one cares about, like, that we're fine, but let's just make sure that we're not losing a use case that we actually have users that want. And I think what we're talking about here will do that. We just have to be careful to make sure, that we're handling all those edge cases that we care about.
Yeah, agree. Yep. Thanks.
So quickly, I want to kind of share one use case, and probably you can see if that works. For example, I have an application which have a PVC, and there's a PV which stores the logs only. So now when I'm restoring that application, I don't want the older log. I still want empty PV, so that when application starts again from the backup, it has a volume where it can dump the new log, but I don't want the old log. So I still want a volume.
I don't think this proposal will cover this case.
Okay.
You're asking to create a new PV during restore, right?
Yeah, I'm saying that new PV, but empty PV, and without any data into it.
I think that may be able to be something you can handle. For example, if you're using Copia, for example, for your backup, you could exclude the PV from the Copia backup to say don't back up this PV content, but the actual Kubernetes resources are still there.
Okay.
So it's a little tricky because normally Velero, if you tell it to use Copia, it'll use Copia, or Breastic. If you tell it not to, it'll try to do a native snapshot. But if that log happens to be on a volume that you're not configured for snapshot, for example, if you don't have a volume snapshot location configured, then if you tell it don't use Copia for this volume, and you're not using snapshots and you're not using CSI, then it won't be backed up.
Okay.
If you're using CSI, I don't know if there's a way right now in the CSI plugin to say, for this one volume, don't back up the contents. That might be a feature request for CSI plugin if it's not there currently.
Okay.
But I think the scope of where we need to talk about the question of, I want to, for this particular volume, not back up the contents, just back up the fact that it exists. I think that's in the scope of CSI plugin Copia Restic, not in the scope of include resources.
Okay.
Because we want the resource, we just don't want the content.
Yeah, I don't know the content, because sometimes content is kind of...
That's something that we need to think about in the context of Copia and CSI and snapshots, and figure out, can we handle it with the current options there? And if not, let's put in an issue feature request to sort of figure out how to do it.
Yeah, that would be an additional enhancement, to the one.
Right. Yeah, and I think the issue there is right now most of that volume level selection is centered around telling Velero, I want to use Restic Copia for this volume versus I want to use CSI snapshot for this volume. And right now, Velero treats that as a Boolean of you either use file system backup or you use some sort of snapshot based backup. And Velero doesn't have a notion of, I want none of the above. That may be something we need to add to say, hey, I want the resource backed up, but don't use a file system snapshotting backup of the contents. That's something I think Velero is missing right now, that we need to think about how to solve it in the context of the fact that it's got to work with CSI and snapshots and Restic and possibly data mover. So it's probably relatively easy to implement, but I think the requirements of edge cases, it's going to require some discussion about how to handle it in a way that's easy for a user to understand.
Now, sometimes these edge applications, they kind of, in a way, don't want too much data, but you want kind of application to be ready to be used quickly.
Yep.
Okay, Orlin, I think we can continue. Thanks, Scott.
Nice. Thanks for that. Okay, I'll try to share again that thing. Where is it? All right. I've added a few stuff to discuss, like the release process and documentation. This one. Can we drive this forward, please? And I have a ask for Pradeep. Can you suggest an update about the milestone usage? When we have the candidates, how we prioritize them and how we add them to the milestone for the next release. That's not in that document for now.
Okay, I'll look at this, but at my view, like anybody can say this is the candidate I want, and then the candidate gets selected based on the team who owns. Some places maintainer may have a say, yes or no, depending upon the kind of current functionality, would it break something and all. But as long as there is no challenge with kind of current functionality, it's a new functionality. If you have funding your own, then its chances of very high it's can picked up. Otherwise, you put a candidate and then it's a maintainer call to kind of put into a next release or not, depending upon their availability. So yeah, we can word it out this somehow, but
yeah.
Yeah.
If I may ask you, if you can check
Yeah.
the current wording, if it's actually correct of what we do,
We'll do that.
right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. My next thing was I've opened not too long ago code owners issue to discuss if we want to have code owners or auto assignees, because right now we have auto assignees for PRs, which is assigning the author of the PR. Is that okay for everyone, or we need some? My idea was to have more visibility when new PR comes in. To have it like some of the team of the maintainers team to be assigned on the respective piece of code, or
I mean, I don't know that the maintainers group is big enough, or that the code is kind of specialized enough that within a given repo we need to really have a different list for different directories. I think, excuse me, obviously for plugins and for the different repos, we have that ability. But I think within the main repo, I don't know that there's enough specialization among current maintainers that really makes a whole lot of sense. I think, especially not at the directory level. It's not like, okay, I'm the backup expert and Shubham's the restore expert or whatever. I think so. I think right now, and when there is a logical person that's maybe not the default, it more has to do with, oh, this person is interested in this particular feature, but the feature crosses directories usually. A lot of times, like the feature I'm working on with the async operations, it's plugins, it's CRDs. It kind of crosses the controllers. Our features tend not to be isolated to directories. They're just the way the project is architected.
Sure.
Correct. I agree with Scott.
Nice, great. I was just wondering if we can make the process of assigning folks to review and stuff a bit more like not the hassle, but that's all perfectly fine. My next thing was the honoring the restore PV flag, which is a show topic, and I'm going to leave it for him. And I have two very social ones. Anyone going to FOSDEM in Belgium on the first weekend of February? No? Okay. So the same question goes for KubeCon. Who's planning to visit KubeCon?
I may be there, I may not. Partially depends on the talk that we've submitted. I was talking internally the way, but this possibility I could be there either way. I'm just not sure at this point.
Yeah.
Which not a FOSDEM.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm asking because we chatted with Wes on the background to do some kind of co-located Velero event maybe at KubeCon.
Yep.
So we can gather and have drinks and chat, not
Yep.
especially for.
I will be at KubeCon if
Yeah.
if my talk's approved or Red Hat approves my budget, then I'm there. But I obviously had nothing confirmed at this point.
Yeah.
But I'd love to meet
just
up with you
wanted.
guys, if I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really hope we can travel from Beijing to, I think the government is lifting up the international travel, but we'll see. And also, we need a budget. We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all fighting that battle. Sounds like. Do you guys have any suspicions of when you might know for sure who from Velero VMware is going or not going? Like, are we weeks or months out from knowing for sure?
The first concrete date will be when the CFP announcement is out, which means at least for VMware, means if you have a talk, you're going, right? And then on the next phase is like with the acquisition now, it's total madness. Okay, maybe I'm not supposed to share that, but it's like another round of discussions who is like eligible to go or not.
Sure.
So that will take another few weeks.
Another few
weeks. But I'm trying internally to get the idea for the whole project who's willing to travel. That's the first thing, because there's two folks that are not willing to travel. And the second thing is, if they're willing, are they allowed in terms of budget to travel? So I hope I can have some numbers soon, so we can try that thing.
I'll just be in touch with you on Slack. I think it's probably the best way to roll here.
Yeah. And related to that, I'm working on the background to get some budget for that event, even like a dinner or something like that, so we can hang around a bit.
Yeah.
Perfect. Which includes, by the way, swag for KubeCon and some other stuff. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Any topics on this one? If you feel like it, you can add a comment over here if you're planning, because there are two different things, right? Your willingness to travel and your planning, and if you're going to be allowed or not in terms of money. If you can drop a line over here, or to me, or to Wes, whoever. Okay. Next one, Daniel. We did this part, right?
Yep.
Okay. And Anshul, you're on the next one on the list. Nice to see you with us. Hi.
So just hoping to get some traction on both of these PRs. We have been pending for a few months now. For the restore PV's flag, I think we discussed in previous meetings as well, and I'm not sure if there's any conclusion from you folks yet on this PI. I see Shubham is also in the call today, so hopefully we can close on this.
I can provide a little bit of input on the first one. I was actually talking to Shubham about that earlier today. My last comment that you've probably seen, basically to restate the issue, right now we have the restore PV's flag, and then there's the snapshot volume flag. The snapshot volume flag determines whether the volumes are snapshotted on the backup side, and the restore PV's flag is the equivalent on the restore side. Both of those are currently used for the native snapshot. For CSI snapshots, the backup side uses that same flag as native snapshots. The restore side does not. So as I was pointing out in my comment, we have two options, because either way we need this functionality. We either need to continue with the current process of piggybacking on the existing internal fields to use for the CSI plugin, same way we do for the native snapshots. The alternative would be to stop using snapshot volumes for CSI, come up with a CSI specific annotation on the backup to say, for the CSI plugin, here's how we control this. And again, because it's a plugin, we'd use an annotation, not a native field. And I was talking to Shubham, I think, and maybe you can give your opinion here, but I think Shubham is kind of the opinion that between those two options, being explicit about using the kind of separate annotation for the CSI plugin probably makes sense, because for one thing, that insulates the CSI plugin from changes to the way Velero handles native snapshots. So that might be a little more stable for CSI. On the restore side, as your PR does, it might be better to remove that connection on the backup side, and in the same PR implement using annotation for both backup and restore to do what you need. So I guess first, Shubham, is that accurate as to what you were suggesting?
Yeah, so my point being, I agree with the changes, but if you even see the API descriptions, the snapshot volumes and restore PVs flags cater to native volume snapshots, not the CSI ones. So maybe during the implementation of CSI plugin, it was an oversight. So we should remove that and use another approach, specifically the annotation one, if possible. Like that's my opinion.
Hey,
But
hey. So go ahead. Sir.
yeah, but I'm not. I don't quite follow the idea. I don't think. I mean, from user experience perspective, maybe users shouldn't care if it's CSI or not, right? They just want to take snapshot. If you follow that principle or idea, it's probably okay to reuse that and extend from the native snapshot to CSI. Do you see a problem with that, Shubham?
It's just that sometimes we have seen users getting confused with volume snapshots and CSI volume snapshots. So that was my point of view. But we can even go ahead with this approach as well and update the documentations.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a strong opinion either way. I just think we need to be
same.
consistent. So I think we either need to do what the PR does and make restore work like backup, or we need to remove that connection completely on both sides and make a new approach. The new approach would be more work. From a user point of view, I don't know what's easy. I mean, it might be easier to add the field because it's there and it's well documented. The problem with annotations is they're a little harder to document. The only risk here, and maybe this is a low risk, is that kind of ties the CSI plugin to the internal implementation of the way we handle internal snapshots. And so that means if we later change the way snapshots work in Velero, that affects the CSI plugin. If that's a low risk, not likely to happen, that may be okay. So you know, the annotation approach kind of makes the two independent of each other, which means one is less likely to affect the other. But the shared approach is from a user point of view probably slightly easier because the same fields work in both cases. I think either approach is fine. I just think that we need to be consistent about either making both backup and restore both honor the same fields that native snapshots use, which is what the PR that's open now does, or we need to completely remove that connection and instead back out the change on the backup side and make a new implementation. I don't really have a strong opinion which approach to take. I think I would be okay with either one.
Yeah, I would strongly push from a user point. Sorry, go ahead, Shubham.
Yes, same thoughts from my side as well. It's either or of those two things.
Yeah, I'd like to make the case mainly from the user point of view, right? Most of the cloud providers are migrating to CSI, and that might be the path going forward and not the Velero way of snapshotting for most scenarios. So I think if anyways that becomes a default in the long run, and like the AP in the API, it's already there. In the CLI, it's already there, right? Why not do that? Because if you do go the annotation route and most customers are using CSI, they don't have a way to configure backup through CLI for CSI, right? Like they can't configure all of those parameters in CLI. So
right, I would agree with that too.
Yeah, so I think, and I believe that then we are in a consensus, and hopefully we can like move towards.
Yep.
It does sound like we're all kind of tentatively in agreement that the approach in this PR is probably reasonable. Let's just go back to the PR now and say, okay, if we agree in the overall approach, let's review this PR as is. Are we good here? Or do we need to make any changes?
Yeah, I'll add my final comment on it. Thank you, Anshu.
Yeah, thank you, Shubham. Thank you, folks. Yeah, that was the first PR, and the second one was around backup results. That PR is reviewed by Scott, and I believe I think Daniel also added it to the milestone, but just wanted to bring some traction for review on that particular PR. I'll paste the link.
I just need more time to handle that.
Yeah, no worries.
Maybe in the next few days or even weeks, But I appreciate your patience. Sorry.
Yeah.
Andrew.
I'd like to add a little bit of context here, just because this actually is a follow-on to some work I did a few months ago. I realized a while back that backups and restores handle errors and warnings completely differently. It used to be the case where on the backup, errors and restores were in the log file, but not in the describe results. And on the restore side, they were in the describe results, but not in the log file. So it was completely inconsistent. My original intent when I went to fix that was to make it consistent and show up in both places. I got halfway there. I implemented a PR that added restore warnings and errors to the log file, because that was kind of our pain point. I mean, we would get customers that would provide us the logs, but they didn't include the errors and warnings because they were in describe only. So that was kind of the bigger pain point for us at the time. Implemented that was merged, and we have it now. I never got around to doing the second part, which was also making the describe results consistent across both, so that you get warnings and errors on the describe side for backups. And this PR does that. So that's kind of where we are with that. So I'm glad you put this in place, because I never got around to doing it myself earlier. So we just need one more reviewer to get this looked at.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Thank you,
folks. Thank you. That's it from my side. Go ahead, Olin.
Thank you. With that, let me refer that one more time. If someone else added anything, anyone else? I think we exhausted the list of topics added for today, but still. Anyone? No? Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the day and possibly evening, Daniel, for you and for me. And see you next time then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.